We're going to be talking about cancel culture. What are the origins of cancel culture? Why does it exist? And what are the consequences to canceling or silencing people's opinions, voices, individuals, groups? Talk about all that today. So let's get into it. I have a couple notes. I just put out a video about cancel culture and I got a lot of feedback very quickly. And I got a lot of questions, but I also got a lot of people who weren't truly understanding the point of the video and the message that I was sharing with them. They could not receive it. So in this video, I just want to clarify some of the things and points from that video. So the first thing is, what's suppressed cannot be addressed. So this is my first issue with canceling people, is that it doesn't remove behaviors, thoughts, and ways of being. It merely puts them under the rug. It merely sweeps them under the rug and puts it in places where we can't easily see it. So the behavior that is being censored, that is being canceled, the people that are being canceled, they don't go away. This doesn't magically disappear. It just puts it in a place where we don't have to look at it or we don't get to see it as readily. So when we're talking about canceling a thought, an opinion, whether it be an individual or a group, we're talking about putting into darkness what is trying to come to the light. So what the internet has done is that it has given a platform for people to express who they are. In the midst of this, we have seen things come to the surface that we weren't aware of. Not that it didn't exist, but that we weren't aware of. So the emergence of groups of people who were like, what? This is crazy. Like, you still think this way, came to the surface. So as a response to that, cancel culture came in to try to mitigate, reduce, or eliminate the spreading of this ideology. But the thing is that this ideology is not new and it didn't come out of nowhere. It has always existed. It has been sitting there, but we just didn't have the outlets or the availability to be able to see it. So I am thankful that these things are coming to the light, because I want to address these issues that we have with one another, right? When we're not allowed to see how people truly think and how they truly feel, we create a society where people are being fake. Okay, people might show you respect in person, but they might not like you truly, or they might have an issue with you truly. So what this does, it creates a social policing of ideas, behaviors, ways of being, but that doesn't eliminate that. It only puts it to the outskirts. It only creates outcasts. So what's suppressed cannot be addressed. We have to allow things to come to the surface and to, if we're going to have a chance to address things that we don't necessarily like or agree with, we have to allow it to be expressed. When we silence that, it's just going to take a different form and it will come back. You don't think that that's going to come back eventually? You don't think that the voices that have been silenced, the individuals, the groups that have been silenced or deplatformed, that they're going to come back in a different way, in a different form? Of course, because that doesn't leave. That doesn't get removed from existence just because you no longer give it a stage. That's ludicrous. So that's my first point. My second point is, what are the origins of the behaviors and the forms of thought that you are seeking to cancel? So this is a more advanced, what I call source thinking approach. So when we're talking about behaviors that we don't acknowledge, some of the examples that I kept receiving were misogyny, bigotry, racism, things of that nature, right? when we look at that behavior, it's easy to just see it in an individual and demonize the individual. But if we look further, we know that that behavior has an origin. That way of thinking is rooted in an experience, a trauma that was generated at some point in this person's life. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot of people in society or in humanity that do certain things to which people's first response is kill them. Kill them, lock them up, throw away the key, just murder them, like completely remove them from existence, right? The thing is that doesn't stop the behavior. And the reason is because we're not getting to the root of why that even happened in the first place. See, a lot of the things that people are trying to stop are the same things that those people experience. I'll give you an example. So, child molesters, for instance, right? The majority of them have had that done to them. And this is the sort of trauma that gets perpetuated cyclically, generationally, from one person to the next. So my question is, or my thought to share is, the children that you're trying to save from experiencing that person that's doing that was once that child. But you forgot. See, human compassion has a limit. Once we reach adulthood, that compassion ceases. But trauma knows no boundaries. It will continue and continue until it is addressed. So when I see that, I don't demonize that person, because by demonizing them, you dehumanize them, and it gives you an excuse to be able to throw them away without realizing that the root hasn't even been analyzed. We haven't even looked at why that happened in the first place. And because of that, we will never truly address these issues because we're too focused on the manifestation and not focused enough on the root that caused that to manifest. When we start thinking like this, then we can address these issues, getting to the origins of trauma rather than canceling the manifestation. The manifestation is just a byproduct. The origin, the source of why that happened, let's look at that. Let's talk about that. When you can see somebody and have compassion for them to that extent, it's not, you don't excuse the behavior. You don't hold people accountable. You don't stop holding people accountable for their behavior. Of course, you always do that. But where we need space to heal is to be able to trace the manifestation back to the source. Why do things happen? Why do things occur? It is not enough to say they're here and we got to get rid of them. That's a cop-out. It's so much easier to say that people are evil and we just got to get rid of them and kill them and lock them up, throw away the key, than it is to sit down and analyze the source and origin of the behavior in the first place. There's a lot of people walking around that have inherited racism, have inherited misogyny just as a byproduct of their environment and their existence. Does it justify it? Absolutely not. But if we understand the origins of it, we can then start to have a conversation that truly leads to healing. If I just say, fuck that, cancel that person, that doesn't get healed. There's no healing in that. There's actually more trauma in that. That cycle gets perpetuated and exponentially increased. But if I can sit down and try to understand why this is happening, that's another level of maturity, and it leads to another level of healing that is currently not the mainstream approach. Point number 3, healing requires communication. If we don't communicate, we cannot truly heal. In order to communicate, we have to have open dialogue. In order to have open dialogue, we have to give people a platform and a voice and allow them to express authentically who they are and what their thoughts are. If we suppress that, cool. Okay, they don't have a voice no more. It's still there. the issue that you have such a problem with is still there. And it's easier, right? It's a lot easier to demonize somebody and cancel them. That's the easy route. Try sitting down and having a conversation with somebody who you do not agree with, whose behavior you do not see eye to eye with. That's a different level of growth that's going to happen from that interaction. So if we can begin to communicate our differences, that's when true healing starts to happen. That's when genuine healing, because at the end of the day, you're going to find out that that person that you claim to disagree with so much, there's a lot of things that you have in common with them. And so if you lock two people up, you could lock one person that's racist against black people with a black person. No matter how much hate they have, through that interaction, through that communication, they will be faced with the reality that that person that they irrationally hate so much is not that much different from them. They might have been raised in a different environment and look a different way, but the true essence and core of humanity, of what we are, there is a commonality between all of us. That's why you can resonate with a message. That's why you can hear me speaking now and say, I see what you're saying, because there is a certain level of who we are that we all originate from. We're all made of the same ACTs and Gs that create this existence. So it's an illusion. This difference is more of an illusion than they are true reality. But in order to realize the commonalities that we share, we have to be open to communicate. If we can't communicate, that's when things start going out of hand. That's when trauma isn't addressed. That's when it gets passed down generationally. It all begins with communicating and addressing things, nipping things in the bud. So this has been going on for many generations. I pointed out that at some point colonization came to North America and Native Americans and indigenous groups of this region, that they were prohibited from speaking their language, from practicing their traditions. That is a form of cancellation. They canceled and silenced that culture, right? But guess what? The people that did it were just repeating their trauma. They were just doing what was done unto them, back to the Native Americans. So they were just passing on that trauma, because at some point they were the outcasts. They were the ones that were different. They were the ones that were being canceled from where they came. See, so we have to allow people to be who they are and understand what made them who they are. That's when we can truly start to have these kind of conversations that are going to lead to any type of healing. Silencing and canceling people because you don't agree with them, that is not wise. That is not wise, and it's not a long-term solution. It's just a temporary band-aid that will sooner or later emerge as a horrible wound, as an infection. Because we have to be able to talk about these things. So, I got a lot of responses from that video, and people were going back and forth, and somebody had said something along the lines of, and if you're in here, please repeat the question. What about like corporations? Should we be canceling corporations who are greedy and who are doing damage to the earth? And to me, I don't even look at it as cancellation. I just live my life in a way that is in accordance with my highest values, right? So I wouldn't even be aligned with that in the first place. So many times our initial reaction, like to save the world, is more outwardly focused, right? So we're trying to say, well, corporations need to do this, governments need to change that, the system is broken, all this. But we rarely start with ourselves. That's when you're going to really feel growth in your life. And that's when these issues are not going to seem as monumental as they truly are, because they all originate from the self. When you have great understanding of yourself, these things don't truly bother you to that extent, because you understand why things happen. When you can understand why things happen, it's not, you stop placing as much judgment or as much condemnation on people, because you realize that people are just acting out of their traumas. People just acting out of what they've been raised. And if we attack them, anytime you attack somebody, they contract. People don't open up when you come at them, they contract. So that energy that was showing a little bit, it just goes inward and it goes back into the shadow. So you're like, well, that's gone. We got rid of that person, or we got rid of that group, that individual who didn't think like us. No, you didn't. It just contracted into itself, and now it will incubate and morph and turn into something else. And later you will see the reemergence of that energy which you sought to suppress. But instead, if I approach and I'm open to understanding and I ask questions and I'm inquisitive about why you think the way you think, what kind of experience did you have growing up, and if I just open myself to communication, then I can gain an understanding. Whoa, okay, I see the environment that you were in led you to be and think a lot of the ways that you think. Okay, so that's when we can start breaking apart why things happen. So that's why I don't believe in canceling anything, because at the end of the day, it doesn't solve the issue. It's just a temporary band-aid, and we're not truly addressing the root of why things happen. So getting to the root is, for me, the solution, understanding why things happen at the fundamental level. And another thing, a lot of people in the spiritual community, they'll be spiritual like, oh, everything is energy and we're all divine manifestations of the one great spirit of the all. Yet in the next sentence, they're saying we're oppressed, or people are doing this, and this is unjust. And so we have to kind of have the ability to zoom out and see why things happen, and not be condemning about it, because everybody's operating from their own level of understanding and their own level of experience and trauma that they've inherited as well. Doesn't justify it, but when we understand that, we have a better approach to heal it. We have a better approach to deal with it, and we can open ourselves up to greater understanding when we know that. I don't believe that, that this sort of victimhood that's pushed so widely is a solution, because it puts the power and control out of the individual's hands. And it says that in order for us to gain greater understanding and clarity about ourselves, we have to change and completely outsource all that change into somebody else's power. And to me, that's not empowering. I believe that it doesn't matter what system you're under, whether it's socialism, capitalism, or if you're in a tribe in the middle of the jungle. If you don't know your purpose, you will feel some sense of not fitting in, of not being fulfilled. So at the end of the day, that's what I focus on for myself, and that's what I encourage others to do. Find your purpose to why you're here and embody that, because you're always going to feel like life isn't fair or it's not enough when you're not in your purpose. When you're in your purpose, you don't even notice what's happening in that regard. You're not pessimistic about life. You're not pessimistic about the earth. You understand that you're in your flow, and you know that life is cyclical and that everything that's happening is divine. From our perspective, it might not seem that way, but when we can zoom out and see the greater totality of things, that's when we can begin to be of assistance to people. But when we sit and wallow in our misery, in our unfulfillment, in our victimhood, we can't be of help to people, because we're not truly embodying our greatness that we know that exists within us, but we are unable to tap into it because we're too focused on things that we don't like. We're too focused on people and the way they talk and what they say, rather than trying to build up our own greatness and leveling up so high that that's not even something that could affect us, that we're having such great impact on the world that regardless of the bad that's going on around, our impact supersedes any darkness. Our light illuminates any darkness that is around us. So that is my approach, and that's why I don't want to put nothing in the darkness. I want things to be illuminated as bright as possible so that we can see exactly what's happening and dissect the origins of why it's happening. And that, I think, is how we're going to get to start to truly heal a lot of these issues and traumas that we're currently experiencing. So yeah, that's the message for today. If anybody has any questions, I'll stick around for a little bit, but I have to go in a minute. I'm going into town, so we have to go into town to get some supplies or some stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to build with that, with y'all on that. And if anybody has anything to add to that or wants to communicate, let me see if there's any comments. Oh, he said, yeah, I love this tent. This tent is dope. Like, this is my first canvas tent before it was, like the synthetic material. But like, this canvas is a different tent and a different style. But I love sleeping outdoors. Hey, peace and blessings to you too, Natural Beauty. Hello, Apotic. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce that. Um, yeah, man. So if you guys have, put them in a question box and I'll get to it. So that's a good question. Primal Health Huck asks, how do you discover your purpose? So this is kind of something that I reiterate a lot of the times because people are always curious about how I would go about this. But I think I would start with this. I would ask myself or ask others around me, what do they see me valuable about me? What are things that people naturally come to you for? And start there. Start dissecting your own abilities, your talents, what you're naturally good at and what you naturally gravitate to. And also consider the opinions and the perspectives of those around you and how they perceive you. That might give you an understanding as to what your natural inclination is as a part of a group, as a part of humanity, something that you can give back to them, to humanity, to the world. So yeah, we'll start with that. Yeah, so yeah, I seen a comment that said like I just want to go back to simpler times, but I think it's our duty right now that we address all of this. Like we have to have these tough conversations. We have to be able to confront these things, not in the way to dispel them, but to actually face them, to actually face to face the things that make us uncomfortable. And so that's the thing, that a lot of people don't want to be uncomfortable. We are paving the way for a world that never puts any pressure on us. We're paving the way for a world that never challenges us. And so we're becoming soft and sensitive to anything that can potentially help us grow. And so my job here is to push people and trigger people to be able to snap out of that. Comfort feels good, but there's no growth in comfort. And right now is not a time to be comfortable because we have a lot of growth to do. So the reason why I approach things the way I do, and I know that I trigger people because that is my intention, to make people, to wake them up from their slumber so that they can think a little bit differently and get out of the rut in the box, the homogenized view of the world that they've been inherited from the culture that they were raised in. So yeah, I believe in challenging people. I believe in being challenged. I believe in adversity being a tremendous benefactor or helper to growth. Like that's how that happens. That's the natural progression of growth on a spiritual, physical level, mental level. It doesn't matter. You have to go through the fire to really experience and level up from that. Yeah, I got a call. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm about to get off. But anybody have any more questions, I'll go through them real quickly. Gloria said, people come and talk to me. They will reveal a lot to me and often feel energized. Yeah, so you might be somebody who people confide in, somebody who gives them good advice. So you might be like a counselor to humanity, to the community. That might be something that you're good at. But if you say you feel tired after, that's something that you should be aware of, not overly giving yourself to people, but making sure that you're also being nourished as well. So that could be in the form of reciprocating energy through money or through, a gift or through receiving value as well from the people that you're giving value to. So yeah, Anthony said we have to find the difference between accountability and cancel culture. Yeah, for sure. Like the thing is that, especially with the internet and stuff, like how do you hold people accountable that don't want to hold themselves accountable, right? Like, so people are only admitting to things because they're being pressured into. So the fundamental behavior that you're holding them accountable for isn't going to change because they're only doing it because they've been exposed, right? So it's like that whole accountability piece it just goes back to the source. Like, if that person doesn't understand why they do what they do, they might apologize because people held them accountable, but it's not going to be genuine, and it's not going to stop future behaviors because the source of it hasn't truly been addressed. But I get what you're saying. Like, personally, in my reality, I truly believe in accountability, you know, especially within a community, within a close-knit group. That's important because it holds people to a certain standard and it regulates, you know, the environment. My thing is, though, like, are we getting to the issue, to the root of it? If not, that accountability is just going to go through the wayside, and it'll come up again in a different way or manifest itself in a different way. But yeah, I think that's a good point, you know, holding people accountable, you know, but I think it just always going to go back to the self. Like, do you hold yourself accountable? And how can I create and nourish a way of thinking, of discipline, a self-discipline that's going to govern that, so that you hold yourself accountable instead of waiting for other people to hold you accountable. And I think it's necessary. They're both necessary, right? Sometimes we don't notice what we're doing. So when somebody presents us and holds us accountable, it reminds us, and we kind of get back in line. So yeah, definitely a balance between all that. And that's what I'm all about. I think it's all about balance, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, everything serves a purpose. You know, even what I'm talking about, even cancel culture in this moment is serving a purpose because it's exposing a conversation that needs to be had, you know. And so nothing is all temporary, you know, but we have to see the lessons as we move through the cycles. Israel says, do you feel that suffering and change are on the same spectrum? I mean, I think of suffering as the resistance to change. That's what I think suffering is, the resistance to change. So the key word in there being resistance. So we can feel pain and we can feel challenged, but that suffering is more of a resistance to what's actually happening, and inability to be able to adjust to what's happening, you know, to be able to adjust to a new situation, to be able to adjust and rise to the challenge. That's where suffering comes for me, is that resistance piece in that moment. So yeah, you know, people say like pain is like mandatory, but suffering is an option, right? Because I think it's more alluding to the mindset that we're in. When we resist in something, that's when we start to torment and suffer within ourselves, rather than seeing like, whoa, how can I fix this? And how can I embody this change to leverage that into growth for myself? So people get stuck in that, and I think that's when they truly suffer, when they're not responding to life and the challenges presented. All right, y'all. Yeah, I think that's gonna be about it because it's getting hot in here, but I gotta go. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I hope we can talk about this, continue this conversation, maybe in the comments of the video, and you know, just think about that. Think about what we discussed today, and you know, share that with somebody, and just be open to having conversations and be comfortable with having conversations with people that don't agree with you, and embodying or embracing points of view that you aren't traditionally gravitating towards, because there's value in all of this. And like I said in my video, all these perspectives are valuable. They enhance the intellectual immunity of the collective. So thanks for watching, y'all. As always, stay balanced. Peace.